As people of this beautiful country, despite its flaws, despite its shortcomings, we are encouraged to come together to celebrate our rich cultural heritage and the diversity of our rainbow nation. Let's do that tonight, my brothers and sisters. Here's a Tsonga traditional group dancing Shibelani. You almost got me dancing in studio. The Shibelani dance. It's a way for the Tsonga people to express pride in their cultural heritage. A very good evening to you, South Africa, and those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman. This is It's Topical. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Ramaphosa Ntsulengwe. As always, our digital audience is here tonight. Welcome, everybody. Good to have them on the program. If you have a burning question, if you have a burning comment, raise your virtual hand as early as possible. We have limited time. I'll do my very best to bring you into the conversation. Look, we live in a very complex and often chaotic world, you'll agree. So it's national months like Heritage Month that affords us an opportunity to reflect and also to refresh one's moral compass, so to speak. But do you think South Africans have a sense of their history? How can we draw more from our custodians of cultural heritage so that we have a better sense of who we are? Which leads us to the question of the week. 28 years into South Africa's democracy, why are some cultures, some people, still feeling marginalized? Please let us know at It's Topical SABC. You can also give us a call 011-714-5958. We want to know, what are you doing to preserve your cultural heritage? How can you and I actively participate in preserving our cultural heritage? At It's Topical SABC. Now, time for your roundup. Okay, let's look at some of the videos that have you talking this past week. And one of the big stories, as you know, President Ramaphosa calling for patience. A lot of reaction to President Cyril Ramaphosa's address at the official Heritage Day celebrations yesterday in Pretoria, especially the part where he asked for South Africans to exercise patience as the government works on repairing Eskom and ridding the country of the rolling blackouts. Here's a little of what he had to say.
As South Africans, as we have done in the past, we have persevered. And I ask once again, let us persevere. The challenge is being addressed. It's a complex one. and we will be speaking soon about the various measures that we are taking to make sure that we address this challenge.
All right, I want to go through some of your comments. A lot of reaction with regards to what President Cyril Ramaphosa had to say. And basically, people are saying that their patience are running out. Have a look at some of these comments from Jacob saying that I have been patient plenty, Mr. President. Charles saying the problems now were caused in the Mbeki years 20 years ago. This is what 20 years of patience brings. Imagine what SA would look like after another 10 years of patience, and pretty much the same sentiment as well. Sefi P saying patience is running out. Loads of promises for years and no action. So that's basically what you had to say with regards to that story. Look, the reality is that we are all going to be contending with load shedding, rolling blackouts for some time to come, even as Eskom today reported that they have lowered load shedding to stage 3. Solution? There we go. SABC News app is your one-stop digital portal to all the news that you need, including the show, It's Topical. So get onto the Apple or Google Play Store and you will never miss out. Now, I want to give you a sense of what we're talking about here. Is asserting language, asserting one's cultural belongings? Before we get into that discussion, let's give you an overview that will tee up our conversation a bit better. And we're talking about the PANSLAB, the body that's in charge with regards to language regulations. PANSLAB, established by the national legislation to promote and create conditions for the development and use of all official language. For now, it's 11. Remember, sign language still in the process. All official language, the Khoi, Nama, and San, as well as sign language. I'm telling you more a bit about sign language in a short while. So with regards to the most spoken language in South Africa, an overview of South Africa's languages. And you'll see something very interesting here as well. The top end of the spectrum in terms of the most amount spoken most frequently is isiZulu, 23%. The bottom end of the scale is isiNdebele, which is 2%. And then it goes on, let's clear that for you, with regards to an 8% for Sesotho sa Leboa, 8% also for Sesotho, Setswana 8%, sign language, 0.5%. I want to tell you a bit more about that in a short while. Seswati 2.5, Tshivenda 2.5, Chisonga 4.5, and English 10%, Afrikaans 13.5, isiXhosa 16%. So that, in a nutshell, gives you a sense of the language that is being spoken here in South Africa. If I can turn that, there we go. So, sign language, as we were talking about, important for those who are deaf in order to develop the language, if it is made official. That is the general consensus for those vying for this language to be the 12th official language in South Africa. So, as you can see, an amendment bill was recently tabled for sign language to be recognized as the 12th official language. So, context, extremely important. What does this all mean for the people who feel that their culture and language is being marginalized? Let's discuss. Let's bring in our digital audience for now and get a sense of their understanding of why certain people feel that their language is being marginalized. Digital audience, good to have you with us. We're going to bring in our guests in a short while. We have a representative from the Department of Arts, Sports, Art and Culture, as well as PANSLAB. Good to have you on the program. Let's start off with Mabuyi Gumede. Talk to us in terms of the question of the week. What do you think are the factors that makes people feel that their culture or their language is marginalized in South Africa?
Good evening, listeners at home. Good evening, fellow panel members. I feel like, yes, the language, some of the languages are marginalized, but as much as they are marginalized, I still feel that it is our responsibility as South Africans to make sure that our languages, we fight for our languages. We fight to languages do not get marginalized. How can we do this? We can do this by making sure that in our homes, we do not dwell much on communicating with our children using the English as a medium of instruction and other languages, but we focus more on teaching our children to speak our vernacular languages, because if we allow our languages to get eroded, that is going to result to the language shift, which gradually leads to the death of language. And then if we allow our language to die, how are we then going to transfer our cultures to future generations? So to answer the question, I would like to say that as people who feel that our languages are marginalized, I think we should not lose hope. But what we need to do is to make sure that we stand up and make sure that we fight for our languages. We teach the younger generations our languages. We make sure that we do not allow our languages to get eroded.
Right.
Thank you.
So, look, that's practical examples of how to preserve. Balindile, do you agree with regards to spoken language, communications, ways of communications in the home setting, around the dining room table? Is that a concern where it automatically now switches to English and not your vernacular?
Thank you so much for posing that questions to me. Oh, sorry.
Go on. Balindile, you have the floor. Go on.
Balindile, right? Good evening, dear listeners. I'm Balindile and I'm Swati. I think in our home, we need to, in as much as our children communicate in just one language at school, which is the universal language, English language, we need to try and communicate in our home languages. At home, I try to speak Siswati with my son, but he struggles, but he can understand me. So in that way, I think, even though it's getting hard because we are less connected to our languages in terms of diversity in school, they need to use one universal language. But then we need, as parents and everyone in the home setting, I think that's what we need to work more on trying to instill and try to speak the language in as much as they can't respond, but if they need to understand it, they need to know that I am Swati and here I can understand Swati. I can understand when a Swati person is speaking because that is my language and I am ethnically Swati. So I think that's what we need to do. It's not easy, but I think that's all that we need to do.
Right. Siki, jump in. If you can unmute. English, it dominates, right, worldwide as a language of wider communication. And there's the stereotype that if you speak good English, you're somehow more intelligent, which is nonsense. How do we get over that hurdle? And how do we make sure that our mother tongue language is spoken to a point where there's no discrimination?
Good evening, listeners, and good evening to South Africans, and thank you for inviting me here. I represent the Indigenous Languages Action Forum that promotes languages, all the indigenous languages of South Africa. So with English, really, the English is spoken because it's the language of instruction in universities, in schools, and of course, because of our history, of our colonial history, where it was perceived that in order to access the market and to access the economy, you have to speak English well. And and of course, there's that. But what is important, though, is to understand that there are countries that don't have English as their main medium of instruction in universities. It's quite common for a lot of people who still have, a colonial mindset. And I mean, I even take issue to the fact that we use the word vernacular when we use the language, when we refer to our own languages. Why are we calling our languages vernacular? They're languages, you know? And so for me, there's dignity, the dignity that we need to approach our language with is also important, to know that they're valuable. However, if we use our languages as languages of instruction in universities, whether you are studying mathematics, whether you're studying sciences, engineering, any language, because as soon as we shift to that and people become eloquent in their mother tongue, in the language of instruction, then it's easy for people to speak that language at home, and the language becomes developed, because people often think we can't use our languages because certain terms have not yet been developed as well as English. But I mean, if we look at Afrikaans is the youngest language in the world. And yet there was effort in ensuring that it became a language of instruction within the certain spaces. So all languages deserve that amount of attention. And we are in a decade where in the 10 years where the UN has noted that there are indigenous languages that are going to be lost. Because when you lose a language, you lose culture, you lose history, you lose so much wealth. And people need to understand that your language is wealth. So I'll stop there for now.
Important point, Siki. Invaluable indeed. Very instructive in terms of the way forward and how we should be treating this. Digital audience, please just remember, if you have a comment or a follow-up or question, please raise your virtual hand and I'll get to you immediately. But I want to give our viewers more context. Heritage Day, as you know, was celebrated just yesterday. And it is a day on which all South Africans are encouraged to celebrate their culture and their diversity and their beliefs and their traditions. Diverse as you know, the cultures are. Some feel that they are marginalized and disempowered. Let's hear this story reported by our producer, Tlela Mqoko.
South Africa has got 11 official languages, but there are other ethnic groups who feel that their languages are being marginalized. We visited KwaMhlanga in Mpumalanga, where we spoke to Isindebele activist Thando Mahlangu, who says their language is not taken seriously in the country.
The reason for that is mainly because we don't have a platform as Amandebele to protect or to raise the issues that we have regarding everything that's happening in Mandebele, regarding having Amandebele on TV, regarding our music playing on radio stations, because Simandebele, we are not given that particular platform, but the only thing that we need is for everyone to give us the platform so that we can unleash the talent that we have, because we have talent, we are talented, we have artists that are qualifying just like other artists or other nations, but Tina Chaba Samandebele, we are not given that particular platform, so we're asking for the ground to be level.
Mahlangu feels that their language is dying a slow death because even children are not being taught Isindebele in schools anymore.
We have Amandebele Devito, we have Amandebele Springs, we have Amandebele Soshanguve, we have Amandebele Bumamilodi, but they are not being taught in Isindebele. In South Africa, they are only taking serious isiZulu, isiXhosa, Afrikaans, and English, which is a challenge because now Kuluma Isindebele, they'll be saying no, Isindebele is similar to isiZulu. You're speaking isiSwati, they say no, it's similar to isiZulu. They were saying it's a Nguni language, so they're putting them under the same umbrella, but as a result, they're not realizing that they are killing another languages.
The Kuntali community also feels sidelined.
The government must see us as human beings and recognize us, our language, because we are also a human being. Also want, you see, there is 11 language, but our language is not the part of that language, but I want it to recognize.
Sign language speakers also feel that their language is being marginalized, but there is hope that it might be added as the 12th language in no time.
the fact that people don't understand the language. They don't have the proficiency in the South African Sign Language. And also, as hearing people, we tend not to include the deaf community into our social circles. And also, the problem that we also have in the country is the lack of the profession in the South African Sign Language interpreting. We do not have enough South African Sign Language interpreters so that we can accommodate our deaf community into that.
For It's Topical, I'm Hlela Mqoko. SABC News, Kwamhlanga in Mpumalanga.
All right, so let's bring in Hlela now live. So from Mpumalanga now to Tembisa and Gauteng. She is with the residents of Tembisa from different cultural groups. Hlela, a very good evening to you. Good to have you on the program and getting perspective from the ground with regards to how heritage and culture can be used in bridging the socio-historical gaps. What part can language play in this regard? Are people, force learning other languages in this day and age?
Good evening, Plain, and thank you so much. We are in Tembisa, as you have said, in Esangweni. We are here to speak to some residents to speak about their language. In fact, the most people that we have here are people who feel that their languages are not taken seriously or strongly recognized in the country. We're going to start to speak with Mamsheli. Mamsheli is from the Malubedu tribe, and she feels that her language is not being taken seriously or being recognized. Hello, Mamsheli, and welcome to the show. Please tell us, how do you feel about the fact that your language is not recognized strongly in the country?
Rina Towel. Rina language ya rena ba ijele thoni. Ke ntho ile ro ke lebeletse o twa ke sa le monyane ke lebeletse sa mathomo a rena dibuku tša bala tša Slovedu. Sa bobedi a rena parking a rena station ka go SABC sa Slovedu. Parliamenteng a rena Slovedu. Ke ntho ile ro ke lebeletse hore a ba re tšele thoni.
How do you think we can ensure that this thing is being avoided in the country and most people learn the language that you speak in?
Rupela ba ithome ka mola parliamenteng. Ba ro ithoma ka parliamenteng ba re diele dibuka. Ke mo mo lo mo a make sure o tseba Selobedu tswana le rena re tseba Sezulu. No ke tseba Sezulu, ke tseba Xhosa, ke tseba Sepedi, ke tseba Sechangane, ke tseba Sevenda. Mara o ka re ke bolela le Mozulu ka Selobedu. O to botsa re 30 into. And
so Mamsheli is saying plain that her language is not being taken seriously because they don't even have books that are written in her language. And she says when she tries to speak the language with other people, they will tell her to speak in isiZulu or in isiXhosa. She even says that even in public areas, when there are signs, there are no signs written in her language. And she says parliamentarians must start acting on this issue. We are moving to Utata, and he's going to talk to us about iTshivenda. Hello, Tata.
Nda.
Please take us through how you feel about your language and the recognition in the country.
Ne Tshivenda tshashu ndi vhona tshi sa koto dzhieliwa nṱha. Ndo sedza uri na mafhungo a Tshivenda a ḓa luvhili kana luraru kha vhege a tshi selisana na a Xitsonga. Mara a Tshizulu na a Xhosa a ḓa musumbuluwo swika Sondaha. Ndi vhona ngari hanefho vha tea u vha uri hu vhe na ndinganyelo then ndi wone hune ra ḓo ri zwithu zwo dzudzanya zwavhuḓi vha khou ri dzhiela nṱha sa Vhavenḓa. Nda.
Well, Budrandeni feels the same way that iTshivenda is not being recognized properly. And he says that something needs to be done as soon as possible so that people can be able to learn in iTshivenda and understand the Venda language. We're now going to speak to a Tswana tribe person who's going to take us through how does he see the Tswana language being taken seriously in the country. Hello, Putin. Yes. Do you feel that isiTswana is recognized properly in the country?
No, ha ke bone go le bjalo ka gore ke nagana gore bophelo ba rena especially mo South Africa re bona o ka re bophelo ba nnete ke ha re bua sejatlhapi le ha re le go tiro re bue sejatlhapi ha rena go ikgantsha ka Setswana sa bo rena ga re na o bontsha setso sa rena gore se tlhaga kae le gona bjanong ge re ra lebella bana ba kajeko re a rata gore ba ye sekolong ba kgone go bua sejatlhapi go be monate bothata ke gore fela ha re le country re lebella gore ga o bua sejatlhapi ke mo utlwagalang rena re le batswana re le mavenda re le basotho re bona o kare ga o sena kitso ya sejatlhapi o ka re o tseelwa ko tlase ke ka mo re reng bana ba borena a re ipileng ka mmino wa rena a re ipileng ka setso sa rena re kgone go utlwagala re kgone go lebegala le ba ba leng ko godimo a ba re tseeleng tlhogo re lebellaneng ka gore re ikgatlheng ka setso sa borona.
Well, he says that the people of the Tswana tribe are not even taking their language seriously because they don't take pride in it. So he says we all have to try and learn each other's languages as soon as we can. So what solutions can we bring in to make sure that we understand and learn each other's languages in the country?
Ke bona o ka re bothata bo bogolo ke gore ba botlhe re ipotsa gore o nna le maatla ga o bua sejatlhapi le ga o rutegile re palla fela go ipela ka Setswana sa borena re bine mmino wa borena re ithabise re bontshe lethabo la rena bothata ke bona bo gore ha re le batho ba rena ba ka mo South Africa re khona go bonagala ha re thabile thata ha re bua sejatlhapi.
Puti, do you feel the same way about isiSwati?
Nami ngitiva njalo.
So what solutions can we bring in to ensure that people understand and take your language very seriously?
Ngibona ngathi bangabeka amabhuku eTswati esikoleni from grade lawa kancane bafundise abantwana ngeSiswati.
Okay, he says that in schools, children need to start to be taught in isiSwati so that the Siswati language grows as well. And then Umama is from the Sepedi language, and she feels the same way that Sepedi is not being taken seriously. Why do you feel this way, Mama?
Sepedi ke gantšha ka sona leo lo re ba se fase nna ke gantšha ka sona le bapedi ba ešo ba se tšeela godimo nna le bona ho lo re setšhaba sa ka mo South Africa ba se tšeela fase a dielo ke na le dilo tšeo lo re di protecta mmele ke na le lerotse mo ke na le lerotse le le dia phufu mo diang phufu le a boya le dia thopi mo diang thopi re dia ka bopiwa mabele re thagantšha le ke thopi re thagantšha le sukiri e brown ra ja ya fepa mmele ka boya ka ya ko mashoje ya boya ya mashoja a haya mmele lebile a fepa mmele ebile a lafa malwetse a lo re ke di-AIDS ke di-sukiri ke di-high blood ka boya ka ya go kwa dinawa tše di fokotša malwetse le tšona di fokotša malwetse ana ke a bolelang disukiri di a di-blood tšona di a lafa mmele ka boya ka ya go kwa morogo le ona o a lafa malwetse ana ka moka gona a lafa disukiri di a di-blood ke kgopela gore se ka la tšea dilo tša Sepedi fase re a lafa batho ba ešo setšhaba sa ešo ka moka le kgolofele dilo tša setšo sa Sepedi ke a le leboa.
Well, Blaine, Umama says people don't take isiPedi seriously. In fact, she says people undermine isiPedi. They even undermine the food that they eat. Yeah. She says that the food that they cook and eat is very healthy, but people undermine it anyway. So the general feeling on the ground right now, Blaine, is that most languages in the country are not being recognized. It's only the so-called big languages like isiXhosa, isiZulu, English and Afrikaans that are being taken seriously. Back to you, Blaine.
Hlela Mquqo, live for us in Tembisa. Thank you very much indeed. It's just gone 8:30 A very good evening to you once again, and a warm welcome to our SABC2 viewers. It's such a great pleasure having you on board. My name is Blaine Herman. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Triforce Ntsulengwe. This is It's Topical. It's a program, as you know, where you have your say on the burning issues of the week, and we have a packed program for you tonight. And as always, our central voice is here. Our digital audience is joining us as well. They are joining us from all corners of the country. There you see their beautiful faces with pertinent views on the issues of the week. Heritage, do you think South Africans have a sense of their history? How can we draw more from our custodians of cultural heritage so that we can have a better sense of who we are? Which leads us to this main question of the week. 28 years into South Africa's democracy, why do some cultures still feel marginalized? Our guest tonight, we have Vusithemba Ndima, who is the Acting Director General of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. We also have the Pan-South African Language Board Executive Head of Languages, Julius Dantile. You can also give us a call, 011-714-5958, or WhatsApp us on 078-459-1819. Good to have you on the program. Let's unpack. Digital audience, remember, your hands are up. I see it already, Trebo and Balindile. If more hands come up, I'll come to you straight away. Let's bring in our guests for now. Vusithemba Ndima, the department. You heard from, I think the first guest was saying that they don't even have books in their own language. Is it an indictment on civil society or government in terms of putting enough policy in place in order to ensure multilingualism?
Thank you very much, Blaine, for that question. But I always want us, when we speak, we give context. Sure. Because what you see today is not something that has just sprung up, but it's something that you can talk about over centuries, that these languages, these cultures, the main idea was to decimate them, was just to uproot them. And we must also then recognize the fact that when the new political dispensation, the democratic dispensation, came into power, the first thing that was done was to have this constitution that recognizes all the languages, of course with 11 official languages. And you can see what government is doing in terms of policies. In fact, the policy that you are talking about of multilingualism is a policy that is in place. It is meant to ensure that all languages are given an opportunity of expression. But also you can see government programs where you have got these languages also now being used in schools, not just as something to communicate at home, but in schools you've got, in the department, for instance, I can talk about the department, we have got lexicography unit, which develops terms, new words, to develop the language so that the languages can now also be used to study science, to study economics, to study philosophy. So there is work that government is doing, of course, with the Department of Education, there's that collaboration.
So given work that is done, I hear you, but why is people still complaining? What more needs to be done in order to satisfy the needs of those who are complaining that their language and culture is being marginalized?
I think that the issue of syllabus, ensuring that these languages are being used in the syllabus, but also I think also the whole mindset must change even amongst us as parents, because many parents would just think that English is the best thing in the world, and that's what you need to. People must begin to understand that these languages would even assist in terms of the cognitive development, because when I speak English, I first have to think in isiZulu. You understand what I mean? And of course, a person who is an English speaker has got a competitive edge because they think in English and they speak in English. But for us, I have to think in isiXhosa and then translate that. And there's an advantage of studying in your own language. That's what we need to strive for.
Julius Dantile from PanSlab, what's the barometer or the yardstick that one uses as an organization like yourself when somebody says that my language is being marginalized, my culture is being marginalized? How would you define that?
There are a number of aspects to that. One, that your language is only used as a home language at home.
Yeah.
It's a domestic language, not as a home language. It should then be relegated to that particular space. That is marginalization. Secondly is when you require access to information. You cannot get that information in your own language. Thirdly, it's in a various government context where you have to look at forms that you fill from government offices, the municipalities. What language are you getting your bills?
Yeah.
That talks exactly to the issue of marginalization.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, in South Africa, we need to, as Mr. Ndima said, we need to contextualize these kinds of marginalizations. That some of the languages are even facing extinction.
Yeah, yeah.
So, if you go to the Khoi and San languages, some of them are extinct. Some of them are facing extinction. Some of them have got not more than 5 people that are alive that speak those languages. For Nwiki, for instance, is only 1 person who's fluent in that language currently. So you have those particular kinds of dissemination of these languages by the previous regimes. Then when you kill a language, you kill the culture.
Yeah, yeah.
Then once you kill the culture, you are killing the identity of that particular native speaker of that language. Then that becomes a societal problem.
Yeah.
Now, with these marginalizations also, you have a problem of socio-economic mobility.
Right.
Is your language providing socio-economic mobility? In terms of socio-economic mobility, there are a number of things that you can benefit through your language.
Yeah, yeah.
One, for instance, do you get news? Not only on television, but on radio, but on print news.
Right.
In your language.
Pause that thought there. So what you're saying is a multilingual society will not only lead to social mobility, but also economic progress as well, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to have to take a break. Digital audience, I see your hands are going to come straight back to you. Quick break. We talk here about heritage, language, and culture. Linked, right? Tell us, how can we best preserve our culture? How can we make people who feel marginalized less marginalized? At It's Topical, SABC. Quick break. More next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. We're talking heritage, we're talking language, we're talking culture, marginalized, those who feel marginalized. Now, on the Word on the Street feature, this time around, we went to KwaMhlanga in Mpumalanga, where residents shared different views about language equality in the country. Let's hear what they had to say.
Yekhethu kwamthimunye kwanomaziana omngoma owangena ikome kuseni angakavunuli wayevulisa kunomaziana nkhaya.
Do you feel that all languages in South Africa are recognized and acknowledgeable equally? Yes, I do feel that. Ke le modudi wa mo KwaNdebele, ke le Mopedi nna ka Polelo. Ba re amogela, ba re rata, re shoma le bona, batho ka moka ba re dula mmo re bolela maleme a go fapana. No,
azifani. Uma ukhuluma isiNdebele noma isiZulu abakuthathi serious abantu bala. Fanele ukuthi ukhulume isilungu ukuze uthi uzwakale la eSouth Africa.
Atindhaweni to hashiwa kufana na entertainment, Matsonga wa kuma scars kwalano batsinini futhi atindhaweni to tala Matsonga a ti tlherisela ndhaku futhi ririmi ra vona ri tekiwa hi ririmi ngaku I ririmi ro huma handle kasi ririmi ra hala a South Africa. So hi ri vanhu a South Africa fanele hi khomana hi ku ringana khosi hi vanhu ba ntima hinkwenu.
Lilwimi lesiswati akulona lilwimi lelisasela enhloko ulwimi lelithatha umuntu lithatha ungasalisilo lwimi etindzaweni letinye bafika kubite ngelilwimi lelitsite kanzi lilwimi lesiswati lilulwimi lelithathwa njengelamanye amalwimi
Sansuri riti tlhomphe and then sansuri khante ka limi la borena especially Bapedi ke bona o ka re le tshabuti introduce thata mo liming la bolena
Ileso naleso sizwe sincoma sona kodwa asisihloniphe sinye isizwe uma besingahloniphana sonke izwe lethu belingaka
ka mokare badudi ba mo Mzansi re bolela maleme a fapolwana re bolela language tse different ka moka re Mzansi ra dumelana re ratana re bana ba thari entsho
mina ngilindrebele ke asikakhatsa ngomndrebele bami.
All right, look, that's what you had to say. It's important to hear from you because it informs strategy. We've got guests here from the language board as well as government in order to take your views, take it forward. Let's bring in our digital audience now. Hands are raised. Just a reminder, we have about less than 15 minutes to go, so just keep your comments short and sharp and we'll get the guests as well to answer your questions. Tebo, Koza, you have your hands up. Your comment, question?
Sanibonani ngokucobokhoza umZulu. It's unfortunate that I have to address everyone in English. It is Heritage Month, but it's okay. What I feel is happening, other tribes need to pride themselves with their language and culture. I will only speak about Zulus because I am Zulu and I'm exposed to Zulus. Wherever you go in the country, if you know Zulu, you can communicate and everybody would know. Why? Because Zulus are stubborn. They're famous of being stubborn, number one. Number two, they believe in their culture and in their language. They will even go to as far as convincing you in your own territory to speak their own language. Why? Not because they think they're superior, but they believe, they have that strong belief. So I feel that to solve all these problems, other cultures or other tribes need to value themselves, see themselves as superior as well, teach each other their culture, enforce it in our spaces so we can learn it. So we can, Zulu people do not travel a lot. But still, they are deemed superior in terms of language because they pride themselves. So if they can teach us, if they can go out there, be on television, have stories, write books, we can read about them. We are very much interested in knowing them. But there's less information or there's less of the culture and the language that we are exposed to.
Right.
So not because the other languages are superior. I mean, Xhosa, Zulu, Afrikaans, but that's because they force their language to people.
I hear you.
They force. Yes.
Maybe the media can take some blame as well in terms of the promotion of the various languages as well. I hear you, Tebo. Anna, Slabe, do you agree with Tebo? If you can unmute, Anna.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I have to say that I really agree with what Tebo is saying. A lot of our ethnic cultural groups are not really accepting of other cultural groups. If I'm Zulu, I'm expecting you to know my language. And other cultural groups also end up having to be, so that to survive, you learn another cultural group's languages in order to survive. I'm speaking this from experience because I had to relocate from Northwest, whereby we only speak Tswana, and go to KZN for like 2 years and study there. I literally did not have any friends because if you speak Tswana, there's a certain perception that you get from that particular environment. So you cannot even exchange, you can't exchange information based on the fact that you speak a different language, a language that not everyone in that particular town is used to or willing to learn. So as South Africans, it comes down to us having the ability to be accepting. I'm not saying I have to leave my cultural, my language, my mother tongue, and only speak the other language.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is we should be more alert to cultural relativism. That's what we call in anthropology. We need to be accommodative of other cultures. If I learn Zulu and I learn Xhosa, that the Xhosa language will also survive through me, even though I'm Zulu.
Right. And yeah, basically stop being insular, isn't it? Living in one's bubble. Fanele, your thoughts?
Thank you so much, host. Greetings to everyone. Well, the question says, why are some cultures still feeling marginalized 28 years into SA's democracy? And my response to that would be that it was inevitable. Because if you come to think of it, when our freedom fighters fought for the political freedom that they fought for, they fought to be included into the white system that had colonized us. They didn't fight to maybe say, let's go back to how things were before we were colonized. So us joining this system meant it was inevitable that we were going to join their ways, basically, and inevitably lose our culture. So I would say that one of our African languages not evolving is a mere symptom of a bigger disease.
Okay.
If I can just make an example.
A quick one.
Yes, a very quick one. If you look at our calendar, we have religious holidays, those being the Easter holidays and the Christmas holidays. So already we are being told that the conduct, how we should conduct ourselves should be informed by the Christian religion, which also shuns the African culture. So you will find a majority of native South Africans being Christian, which opposes the African culture, and in turn, we ourselves are gonna start following the Western culture, which is what is happening today. Thank you.
Lungile Zondi, you nodding your head, you agree?
Yes, of course. Good evening, everyone. Yes, I am in agreement with everything that has been discussed. One of the panelists spoke to the fact of the historical background that we come from, which we have inherited, or a lot of cultural patterns were imposed on us. And I'm not saying us as in because I'm a Zulu, but in South Africa or in Africa as a whole. However, we do have a solution to this. And it saddens me that in the period of 28 years, we find ourselves, having to also speak about this as a socio-economic crisis and a social identity crisis. However, I think we do have solutions. It's just that we somehow underestimate our wealth as Africans. We always want to be, to be informed or to learn. It's good to learn, but how you internalize what you have learned is also a different case. Right. So I believe that it is time we go back to our roots. We need to accept ourselves that there's nothing wrong with being born in Africa. And I'm drawing from an anthropological perspective. Yeah. There's nothing wrong by being a Pedi. There's nothing wrong by being a Msutu. All we need to do is to embrace ourselves. Yeah. And then create public participation where we promote cultural diversity. So in a way, no one will feel that a particular cultural group is much more dominant and richer than we are all equal.
Yeah, look, Lungile, I like what you're putting forward because it's practical, right? It can be done. It can be done tomorrow if there's will. Let's bring in Risimati Mkari. Sir, good to have you on the program. Would you say that there's a general lack of understanding of each other's cultures, which gives now rise to this feeling of marginalization?
Good evening, Blaine, and good evening to other fellow panelists and viewers at home. I want to agree with Fanele to say that Africans in general feels that their languages has been marginalized. My input will be for Africa to return, we should at least mentally and by our own actions go back to our roots and examine ourselves as African people. It is time for Africans to search for the spiritual elements which put Africans or held Africans together. And that is our language, heritage, and culture, which in a way has been destroyed by colonial authorities, which took over Africa and destroyed everything which Africans has. Our heritage as African people is our language. And other people whom we should blame without fear and favor and prejudice are our parliamentarians who pride themselves by the good command of the foreign language, which is English, than promoting African languages. And I want to urge all politicians across the political lines that we should promote our indigenous African languages. Otherwise, our languages are going to disappear.
Mr. Mkhari, thank you very much indeed. We have to pause it there. Digital audience, keep your hands up. I'll try and get back to you as soon as possible. Also get our guests to comment on the various points that have been raised. Quick break, more next. All right, welcome back. Let's get straight to our digital audience, our magic wall. We need to speak to Xolani with regards to the issue of marginalizations. Very briefly, sir.
For me, I'm going to add up on the book thingy, or the guy who said something about books. As a party, I think I'm a books and I'm a platforms. I'm going to speak for my musicians and stuff. I'm a platforms. As Swatis, we don't have platforms, we don't have books, we don't have dictionaries. So I think it might help in terms of balance our languages in our origin, mother's tongue. And yeah, and music, and as musicians, we have to keep on passing the positive message in our own mother's tongue, our own language, because music is very powerful.
100%. And maybe there's a way there, subtitling music, for instance, that will help people better understand some of the lyrics and then get used to a certain language, for instance. Let's get final thoughts from our guest, Vusithemba. You've heard the complaints, you've heard the concerns. Parliamentarians asked to do more, politicians asked to do more. What more can you do as a department?
Well, I just think that maybe as I was listening to the speakers, I think it became very clear that all of them are in agreement that the only way that we can do away with the marginalization of African languages is to use our languages, to be proud of our languages, is to write using our languages. They must be part of the education system. So I think if we can just get things right there, we will be able to promote our languages. The last thing that I want to say, parliamentarians, they are not marginalizing languages. Remember, in Parliament, parliamentarians use all languages. In fact, there is even simultaneous interpretation where people can use their language. You can use isiZulu, you can use isiXhosa, isiTswana, and then there is simultaneous interpretation. So, yeah, I just wanted to correct that.
Thanks a lot. 15 seconds we have, sir.
Yes, I think the mantra which comes out of this is saying people now have got the places, but now they're demanding spaces. We've got the place in terms of policy, constitution, and all that, but then that is a top-down element. Also, societies must come up by themselves to claim their spaces so that they can be represented.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to digital audience as well as our guests. Here's my take. How do we support those who feel marginalized? One, we must make more of a concerted effort to incorporate at an official level, at a social level. Two, we must resist the urge of becoming insular. And there's practical nation-building benefits to that. It's time to start engaging meaningfully, having conversations to expand cultural understanding that we are all in this together, and only together can we forge ahead into a brighter future. Learn from the past. Let's draw from our custodians of cultural heritage so that we have a better sense of who we are, which will hopefully lead to appreciation of others and a resurgence of hope for those who feel marginalized. That's how we wrap things up. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.